This show is brought to you by Ridley College.
Hi, I'm Scott Harrower.
And I'm Mike Bird.
This is the Now and the Not Yet.
The show where we keep you plugged into what's happening on planet theology.
Hot off the press.
Theology, I'm assuming, is still alive and well by the sheer number of theology books that get published every year, every month, every week. Scott, what have you been reading? Because readers are leaders.
Readers are leaders, my friend. A great book to be reading is this new book by Levering. It's called Engaging the Doctrine of the Holy Spirit.
Oh, you say Holy Spirit? That sounds Pentecostal.
Levering's driving question is, if God the Son has a name, the Word, what are the proper names that we can give to the Holy Spirit? So what Levering does is he firstly challenges us in terms of how we interpret the Bible. And he wants to move away from a very boring and dry historical critical approach, right? But what he does then is he goes, I'm going to do the best of both worlds. I'm going to take New Testament exegesis, particularly James Dunn, and I'm going to marry that with the work of Aquinas. And then he mounts his argument that the Spirit is to be properly referred to as love and gift. So this is part of an interdisciplinary movement that we see in the work of people like Kevin Van Hooser, who's wanting to touch on history, theology, really good exegesis. And Levering is a first-class scholar.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, so he basically tackles the Filioque debate. And
who wins? Who wins?
You know who wins? Aquinas wins. Because he says that Aquinas is like Maximus in that, and this is really important, in that in Aquinas you have the resources for avoiding the theological errors that both West and East want to make.
So, Scott, where does he stand on the Filioque clause? Because the East and the Western churches want to know.
Right. Is the Spirit from the Father, or is he from the Father and the Son? What Levering says is that in the tradition, and we need to be interpreting the Bible according to the tradition, we find in Aquinas and in Maximus the resources to say, yes, the Spirit is from the Father and of the Son in some sense. And what's important for Levering isn't so much as what you say positively, that the Spirit is from the Father and the Son. He's not too concerned with the details of that. Rather, he wants to say, we can say something like that without offending the East in terms of theology or the fact that we added to the Creed. And we can also say that in such a way that the West is happy that we're affirming some kind of personal distinction between the persons of the Trinity. It's a really well thought out book. And the best part, Mike, is his ecclesiology.
Awesome.
He takes the doctrine of the Spirit really into its logical conclusion to do with love, unity and holiness in the church.
Great.
It's a fantastic book. I recommend it to everybody, students and people in the church alike. It's readable, it's rich, and it's the kind of book that you'll read and reread.
Okay, and what else have you been reading?
Well, Mike, the second book I'd like to review today is Christian Oxyrhynchus. Okay. Now, we spoke about Oxyrhynchus last year. I went to the release of this book at the Society of Biblical Literature meeting in San Antonio, and I was really impressed by the panel at the launch. Both authors were there. We've got Blumel and Weymouth, and they discussed the logic behind the volume. The logic and the rationale is as follows. There's a lot of documents that have been found, dry papyri in Egypt, and they are unsystematized, and Christians haven't had a single volume in which all those documents that refer to Christian living or ideas or music are gathered together. And that's what they've done. So you'll find in this volume all sorts of things from Christian receipts for buying things to early Trinitarian hymns to very early papyri. So it's very exciting. I'm going to be using this in my early Christianity class. I'll give you an example. If you turn here to page 321, what you have is a description of a particular artifact that will give you a bibliography over the page, there'll be an introduction to that fragment. They'll give you the history. They'll tell you that the date is about 250, so it's quite early. And then they will have a translation of the papyri. And many of the papyri will have the original, a copy of how the papyri lines are broken down.
Yeah.
You have a translation and then some commentary, so it's excellent. So this is a very important volume, especially for those of you that teach early Christian studies. I'm going to be using it in the classroom, and perhaps next season
Yeah.
I could give you an update about how it went.
Yeah, be good.
The now and not yet.
Now, I went to the Los Angeles Theology Conference, and you know that Oliver Crisp and Fred Sanders and the crew there at Fuller and Biola are into this analytic theology stuff.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Analytic theology is kind of like the cool kid on the block right now.
Yeah, well, it's more like it's a bit like that. All the cool kids are doing it.
All the cool kids are doing it, but Mike, I understand you were the not so cool kid at a panel which was discussing analytic theology.
I did look. I thought analytic theology is a very worthwhile thing to explore. But in football teams, I'd say I wouldn't make it the quarterback. It's more like special teams.
Special teams, you're kidding.
So you bring it on for certain particular tasks.
Oh my gosh.
I wouldn't make it the quarterback calling all the shots.
Really?
Really.
Wow, controversial, my friends.
So I want to affirm.
Controversial.
I mean, analytic theology I find very helpful for looking at areas that are involving paradox and speculative areas like God's relationship to time. But I wouldn't be making this the main tools I approach everything with.
Okay, shock and awe, ladies and gentlemen, because I went to a lecture at Fuller Theological Seminary a couple of months ago, and in that lecture, Oliver Crisp, who heads this movement, said that it's time for analytic theology to recognise the fact it is not special teams. It is not just a tool. Rather, it's a full-on movement that's going to make distinctive claims about Christian beliefs, fresh ones, new ones,
You say it's not
creative
special
ones.
teams.
It's not special teams. It's the playbook.
It's
the playbook.
He was talking some smack talk against me, because that's what I said in my conference presentation.
Well, I'm telling you.
I think he's trying to smack me down. I think he has offended my honor. And
A duel!
I will meet him on the field of honor.
Yes. Like your friend Hamilton.
Yes, yes. And if he wants to be the bird in my Hamilton, well, bring it on. Except this time, Hamilton is not going to throw away his shot.
Oh my gosh, okay, I think we've started something. So, if you want to be up with this conversation, and this links into the book.
Yep.
If you want to be up with this conversation, you might feel like analytic philosophy is a little bit of a strange cousin to theology, and you don't know how to get into it.
Yeah.
Here's a really helpful resource for you. This is a great book by Colin McGinn, and he gets into the philosophy of language, and it's essentially a reader.
Yep.
So he goes way back and he tells you, why is philosophy of language a thing? Why does it matter? What are the kind of concerns? So for example, what are sentences? What are claims? What does it mean to talk about the sense of a sentence?
Yep.
How do you think about referring to things properly? And he goes through many debates that are very important in the philosophy of language. So he deals with Grice and Kripke and Frege and all those people. So if you want to get into analytic theology and analytic philosophy, this is probably where I'd start.
Okay.
This is the reader, takes you through all the basic documents and their logic. So, Mike, it sounds like we need to put this...
Well, maybe I need to read this
think,
to gain a little bit more empathy for analytic theology. Not that I'm against it, but
it's the real deal, man. I'm telling you, it's the real deal.
It's a deal. It's not. I won't say it's the only show in town.
Okay, but it may be driving the show. That's where they want to go. All right. Anyway, down the more pious end of things, Mike.
Okay.
There's another resource.
I like piety.
And this is a resource, it's in German, but it's the kind of resource that needs to be put into play in English.
Yep.
Okay, this is, in English, it would be Faces and Stories of the Reformation.
Okay.
And basically what's happened here is that Roland Werner, who's kind of like Germany's Billy Graham,
Oh, really?
and Johannes Nelson, they have edited a volume in which there are biographies of Christians who have been inspired by the Reformation.
Yep.
And they're very short pieces with the key points in their lives. And it's basically for that meditative, sort of ruminative Christian reading before bed as examples for us. There's a few people that have really interested me in this volume. Dorothea Trudel, for example. David Livingstone's in there.
Wow.
Konstantin von Tischendorf, who unearthed a whole...
Bunch of manuscripts in the Sinai, yeah?
Yeah, so these are all just great Christians in lots of aspects of life. And I think that there's a real place for this kind of work to be developed in English.
Okay.
So, some new books. The world of theology is alive and well, my friend. We're in safe hands.
We are. We certainly are. And I'll see you, Oliver, on the field of honour.